It's Real Talk, Episode 6, Guillermo del Toro. On today's show, Justin Tyler returns to see if we're drift compatible and can score Pacific Rim. Little Liler, the silver screen sugar glider, has solved the Riddles 3 and now gets to review Pan's Labyrinth. Post Wrestling's Neil Flanagan has hidden his cat because he'll be grading The Shape of Water. Now quick, leave a like, subscribe, and we'll enter the maze. Real Talk is powered by Real Digital. If you work for a brand or agency producing content, keep it real by setting up a consultation at www.realdigital.media to see how your next campaign can come in ahead of schedule and under budget. Do you like your avatar a little more Power Rangers and your Power Rangers a little more Cloverfield? Well, throw in an Eye of Sauron and I've got a cheesy genre flick that's hard not to enjoy. When you have a movie like Pacific Rim, there's a lot of suspending of disbelief required going in. But when the solution to every situation is a clumsy fistfight, it quickly becomes impossible to believe the film will evolve into more than a thoughtless action movie. Why do the Earth's greatest soldiers, using our most advanced tech, immediately devolve into a loud, colorful blur that resembles a mall food court brawl between Optimus Prime and Inspector Gadget? Surprisingly, it's the non-Kaiju and non-Jaeger or giant robot characters that are the most colorful and entertaining. The cast knows exactly what type of film they're in and display just enough effort to elevate the hokey plot. Despite its flaws, Pacific Rim will forever be an example that any material in the hands of a master will likely be elevated and better than it should be. Although a bit too long, Pacific Rim is a kaiju-sized barrel of fun that will almost certainly leave the intended audience satisfied. Justin Tyler returns to the show to help me cancel the apocalypse, so let's hear what he scored the film.
It's crazy when you can calmly say the quote-unquote iconic line from the movie and it sounds just pretty normal.
Yeah, I spent most of last night practicing cancel the apocalypse right off the tongue. Yeah.
And is it like, I forget how he says it when I just watched it and I was like, I heard that line and I was like, oh, yep, that was the one. It's not really a yippee-ki-yay motherfucker situation.
No, it's in nor is it.
You tell him the apocalypse is canceled. What?
If you say a joke and then someone tells you the joke is funny, it's maybe not a good indication that it's funny. I think he says that in the very next line is somebody in the movie going, great speech. But anyway, Pacific Rim, an interesting movie, really flew under the radar. I didn't see this movie until recently.
Really?
Yeah, it's interesting because I love the director. I love Mr. Del Toro, yeah. And I don't really know why. I mean, this would have been interesting to me. This came out in 2013, and it didn't really hit. And the last time you were on the show, we talked about how well Airplane did or maybe didn't do internationally. This is like the opposite of that. This movie did exceedingly well internationally. It did not make its money back in North America, but it did very, very well overseas. And I don't know. I guess it somehow flew under my radar. These giant robots flew under my radar.
They're called Jaegers, dude.
Yeah,
they're called. And I gotta say, I'm sort of a Jaegermeister because I saw this movie when it came out. I do a comic book podcast, and we were doing our show for Nerdist when they launched their YouTube channel, and we had a second show this summer that we called the biggest summer ever because there were just so many blockbusters coming out. So we extensively watched this movie, extensively reviewed it on that show. And I think this movie, it's telling the worldwide gross because when it came out in 2013, that's when it was like the China box office specifically was banging. That's since gone away, which is why movies are shifting yet again to being something else, I think. But yeah, definitely saw this. Was a big Guillermo fan coming into this movie. And I did not like this movie when I saw it.
I was going to say, you covered it extensively, but you didn't quite reveal thoughts on it.
Did not enjoy this movie. Because of what you were sort of saying in your intro, like, this movie is so dumb at points. Very stupid ideas. And you're just meant to be like, this is the way it is. It's like, oh yeah, it definitely makes sense to have two pilots.
But even down to, I think what really, and we are talking about plot, just to be clear. So I think this is all, very appropriate for what we're focusing on. I just think to myself, if I was tasked with how do you block a scene where a kaiju is fighting a giant Jaeger, Not too offensive.
Thank you.
I think I would probably reference, I don't know, maybe I'd go watch some episodes of The Crocodile Hunter. I might just look at how do human beings when taming a horse, a crocodile, anything much an elephant,
Taming a
much
horse, yes.
yeah, what are the techniques they use? I can't imagine any of them would be, well, they go box the horse. Or they
Yeah.
go, they go and they get a stick out and they just bang on the elephant. And I think that's what for me was it just was a bridge too far, a bridge too dumb, perhaps, where I thought if you had all this advanced tech and you had all of this dream scenario where we have an enemy so big, we all align and all we can come up with is just trying to bang these things over the head with
Well, they were trying to build a wall for a while, but
it's true.
they killed people who are too high up, as Charlie Hunnam,
Yes,
learns.
that's a good point.
Um,
Why, by the way, I'm curious why they didn't use the Jaegers to build the wall.
Great. These are questions. These are great questions.
This is what we get.
Definitely a good
This is what
idea.
real talk is all about, baby.
Well, that's the crazy thing. Like this is such a genre of movie where they're like, all right, say a ton of stuff at the top of the movie and then never think about it again. Because the minute you start thinking about any of this, it's like, uh-oh.
Right.
Like, just to do a quick run off the dome, yeah, like the wall, never gonna work. Why was one of these cloned kaijus also pregnant? Doesn't make sense to have sex with another kaiju in the throat on the way up and instantly give birth. The two sides of the story, Charlie Day doing the mind meld, the drifting with the different kaijus, happens to come together right at the same time. It's just a Pacific Rim that is being threatened by monsters. Because honestly, if the breach occurred in the Atlantic Rim,
Yeah.
no problem. The kaijus would just be chill weirdos who like to read books and sip tea.
Exactly.
It's the Pacific Rim is the real issue here.
That's the one you got to worry about. And they a real lost opportunity with the sequel. Why Pacific Rim 2? It could have been Atlantic Rim, and you just build in this, we're eventually going to get to all the oceans.
Gulf of Mexico Rim.
That's
And
right.
everyone's just fucked up. Everyone's just really guzzling canned beer.
I think for me, the plot really, really struggled because it has all of the elements there go where you go in you're probably not asking for a lot. I don't think this movie is attracting people who are looking for a beautiful mind or
Mm.
just a really elaborate plot. I think these are people who just kind of want to go have fun, and even on that level it seems like it's not giving the attention that it needs. So if you as you well know,
Mm.
you got to designate the plot a score 1 out of 10.
Whew, tough, because it is not a great plot. But in the world of having two very different ideas, let's get in the heads of the kaiju and let's punch the kaiju. It does actually come together in a timely way. Like it's executed well, I feel like. But it's not going to really get it over the halfway mark. So I'm going to give it a 4.
What are other examples of this kind of genre film? And you have your obviously all of your Godzilla movies, which
Yeah.
I think in a way almost aren't a fair comparison because this is more
No.
about the Jaeger than it is about the kaiju. So then I guess the only real point of comparison kind of within the North American market, these are your Power Rangers films. And I
Yeah.
do think this movie is leagues above any and all of those attempts. So it is difficult because if we're examining the plot in a vacuum, it has a lot of holes, but I think it is still easy to appreciate when you're comparing it to any of its kind of contemporaries. But having said that, I think one of the stronger parts of the movies are the characters and performances. There are a lot of characters and a lot of fun performances in this movie. I feel like these characters are almost cartoons. Like there's another universe where this movie comes out and is
Yeah.
immediately a Saturday morning cartoon, and I think all of these characters would translate really well to that. But I digress. What were your thoughts?
Idris Elba, this is prime Elba. He is just crushing this moment in his career. So hype to him. He has to do a lot of like serious face, bloody nose talking. Charlie Hunnam, man, you sort of feel for this guy. He got Hemsworth. He really was. He got eclipsed by a similar looking series of dudes.
Yeah.
So that's too bad for Charlie. He does a fine job holding down the half of the kaiju. The other half, Rinko Kikuchi playing Mako, was good job. I mean, solid. A lot of emotional heft given to her character. I got to shout out a guy named Bern Gorman in the film. Sick. I was like, you know how you're reading like it's like the character name and then the actor name, and I was like, there's no way Bern Gorman is a real name.
Mom and Dad thought Burn would, and it clearly opened some doors.
Killer name. So literally fire name. But the character I want to talk about, I feel like is just such a time out of mind, time and space, is Charlie Day playing the Doctor. Who I was like, this Charlie Day. This was like when it like. Always Sunny was just out there. He had become the star, and he was just scooped up. And he has a line, "Fortune favors the bold, or fortune favors the brave, dude." And I was like, that's not the quote. That's a weird dude to add on there. But he's out there doing the work, and his name will forever be on every VO casting spec audition that I get. I was like, want to sound like Charlie Day? And I was like, what an impact. He's the funny doctor in this movie, a trope that came back in many Jurassic Park sequels.
Yeah, it was an interesting choice. I mean, they give him these sort of tattoo sleeves. I mean, I think there's like, it's almost
Weird.
like 2013 version of what they think Jeff Goldblum in Jurassic Park would have been. Where he's,
that's a great call.
But it is an extremely colorful performance. You know, when he's in the room or in a scene again with an Idris Elba, I think they play together really well. Charlie Hunnam, clearly, I mean, an incredibly good-looking gentleman. I think he's stands out as a leading man. I don't know if it were decisions that he was making or if it was something that was directed to him, but there were a lot of moments that were a little cringy to me for him. And it didn't really happen with the other characters. I feel like the other characters were able to kind of hit these hokey notes pretty well. But it didn't work for me. As much as I appreciate him and I think he was very well cast, the performance specifically, I don't know, it pulled me out a few times.
I think he has a lot to say, and the writing I think failed him a lot with lines like "We're drift compatible." It's sort of like hard one.
Yeah.
And sure, Idris nails the apocalypse is canceled line.
Yeah.
I believe it's a wide shot on him when he's saying that. That's a telling choice to zoom away from the iconic tagline of the movie.
Charlie's character also has to be this sort of bridge for Mako and the audience because he's sort of seeing experience. And that's a lot. I mean, no other character in this movie is tasked with really having to not only experience what's happening in real time with the character or with the audience, but also has to then sort of be, I don't know, react in a way that other character can't, because Mako is her arc is we come to learn that she was traumatized in an incident when she was a young girl by a kaiju and was rescued by Idris Elba's character, and I'm assuming was kind of raised by, it's more than implied, almost said, I think that he's sort of a father figure to her.
He won't put her on as the second chair because he cares too much for her.
That's right. Take that, Charlie. I don't know.
But then they have a great stick fight.
I'm so glad you brought up the stick fight, because that was another scene where I thought, did they fight with sticks at any point? Just give me a Jaeger at some point holding a stick to justify why they would be fighting. But I guess maybe that's not the point. I guess more it's about if you can beat someone up, they can beat you up equally, that you're then compatible. Was that the point that I missed?
Do you mean drift compatible?
Drift compatible, of course, yes. Thank you for...
Just to be clear, I just want to make sure, because I am not feeling drift compatible with you, Al. Maybe it's a species difference.
We haven't had a stick fight yet.
Yeah, we should. We should do the stick
All right.
fight,
Well, let's
perhaps.
pause real quickly. We'll come back. We'll do a stick. All right. Well, now we're back. We just had a stick fight,
Wow,
and
that was so long.
yeah. Are you feeling more? I feel much more drift compatible.
Exhausted. I do feel closer to you, but I'm so tired. Man,
Well,
all my little knuckles are wrapped by your stick.
well, I appreciate you for hanging in there with me. It was a glorious, glorious battle. Too bad we should have filmed some of it. It would have actually been great for
Yeah,
the
it
podcast.
would have been really good. Or at least the audio.
But regardless, if you want to see a stick fight, you can watch Pacific Rim. Leave a comment if you want to see a stick fight between Justin Tyler and myself, Albert the Movie Lion. But in the meantime, Justin, if you were going to designate the characters and performances a score out of
Mm.
10, what would you designate?
I'm gonna go with a 6 here. I think the writing's damaging a lot of it, but people are trying their hardest, and you don't get to see too much Charlie Hunnam these days.
It's true, not enough. And I'm sure there are probably a lot of female listeners that would agree with you there. Because again, I mean, I'm a lion. I'm a heterosexual lion, and he made me blush a few times.
Yeah, he hot.
Yeah. Next up, we got the visual storytelling. I think if this movie has a strength, it might be its visuals. And I'll start out by this because obviously I want to get your thoughts on the visual storytelling. Do agree or disagree? I'm watching this movie and I keep thinking this 2013 film looks so much better than every science fiction movie I've seen in the last 3 years, maybe save for like an Avatar Way of Water or something. But I recently saw your Fantastic Four. Fantastic Four looks like it was made 15 years before
Well,
Pacific
it's
Rim.
set in the 60s, just to
That's
be
very
clear.
true.
So that's maybe where the style isn't
There you
exactly
go.
what
I
you wanted.
silly me, silly me.
But I agree with you. I was like shocked by how well the visual held up, and honestly, I was like, I liked this movie more exclusively, I think, because of the visuals and the fights. They were excellent and really, really clean, sharp visual and special VFX. Like the action, the physical action is really nice, and as foolish as it is to have two people piloting these Jaegers, it actually visually looks awesome when
Yeah,
they're
they find a
fighting.
way to articulate that
Yeah.
very well.
It has very like Dance Dance Revolution energy of two people doing the same thing next to each other. I was reminded of the Scott Pilgrim DDR
It's a
situation.
great, yeah, it was a great call.
Visually, I was like, shouts to this movie. The sci-fi world where they're like training and stuff is not. It's getting close to Matrix Zion level of like, okay, cool it a little,
Right.
but there's enough there to have it feel nice that they're in the different spaces they're in over the course of the movie.
But even that space when they go into it, I actually was. I don't want to say I was surprised, but I feel bad identifying that because it makes it seem like I wasn't expecting much from this movie. But when it pans up, there's this thing they do where the ceiling or sort of the dome or whatever they're in, it's very kind of dark, and you could clearly you could tell there's depth to it because there's these sort of different lights. And just as you're taking in the shot, it just gives it almost this like kind of whimsical vibe because it feels like there's almost stars or something up there. But when you focus your
Yeah,
eyes and you look in, you realize like again, no, this is this facility and it all there's this big open space, but almost as a result of that, every inch of the facility has to kind of be layered on it. And I agree that I was like, well, this feels a bit out of place, but it also still had a really interesting aesthetic to it that
yeah,
seems pretty unique to that set. I've never really seen, I don't know, kind of because it's just a hangar effectively. It's just a big hangar, but
yeah.
it was really distinct looking. The other thing I want to point out, because they kind of wear these suits, these Power Ranger suits when they're piloting, I just was looking at it and I thought, if this were 2025, those suits wouldn't be real for some reason. For some reason,
Right.
those suits would just be CG, and they just look great.
They
They're
do look great.
completely flat black, and I just remember thinking, that look, there's no reason that it wouldn't be practical. Like, why wouldn't you think, yeah, just make the suit? It doesn't need to do anything, and it looks great and it translates well. It's completely black, which you know this as a director is kind of a rule when you're on set and when you're making wardrobe choices, you try to avoid all black things. And the
Yeah,
fact
all
that
black or all white.
yeah, and they're in an all black thing in a very dark room, and it still works and it's reflective enough. I really, really appreciated the visual storytelling in this, and in
Yeah,
particular, even like I said, the wardrobe choices. And Guillermo del Toro is again a masterful filmmaker, has a
masterful.
great crew, and the wardrobe in all of his movies, from Pan's Labyrinth to Shape of Water, they're great. But I just point that out because in particular, the practical wardrobe in this movie works really, really well.
Yes, agree completely. Now I'm trying to remember which order because he did Pan's Labyrinth. It's just crazy to do Pan's Labyrinth, hard pivot to this, and then pivot back to Shape of Water, which won a ton of Oscars.
Yeah, there's Hellboy in there. There's I feel like
Yeah,
there's
I guess that makes sense.
another.
Oh, Hellboy was before this, right?
Yes, it definitely because there's two Hellboys, and I think this was in between.
Yes. Of course, you're thinking about the Golden Army. There's also other Hellboys that were made later that people don't talk about. Because we should mention that Ron Perlman is in this movie,
Yes,
playing a very crazy role.
and I was excited to see him. It was fun, a fun reveal. But again, a character that's just a little, just like 2% underdeveloped for me. I still
Yeah.
needed to kind of understand, like, we have these very hyper specific scientists who are experimenting with this technology that they've just discovered that apparently Ron Perlman's been messing around with for years in the basement. That was a little bit. I was like, wait a minute, did I miss something in terms of a connection that he had with a program or something? But there's a chance maybe I did.
Looking at his filmography, it was Hellboy was before Pan's Labyrinth, which I
Wow,
didn't
didn't realize
realize.
that. Yeah,
That's crazy. Hellboy 2004, Pan's 2006, Hellboy 2 2008, then Hobbit, of course,
wow, yeah.
then Pacific Rim, after that,
It's a
and then
real.
other Hobbit stuff. So like he was, and then Crimson Peak. I don't remember that, and then
I
Shape
remember
of Water.
Crimson Peak. Yeah,
So like what
what
a
a run.
journey.
Yeah. We asked the question in episode 2, is Denis Villeneuve the best director of the 20 teens? He had an incredible run with Sicario. Well, Prisoners came before Sicario. I'm just naming movies he did, not in chronological order. But Prisoners, Sicario, Blade Runner, um, Arrival is in there. Really incredible run. But Guillermo, pretty solid run himself here, just in terms of
Yeah,
variety.
and he didn't direct the Hobbit movies, right? He just wrote them or something like that. I
I
think so.
don't
Maybe
remember.
he,
Yeah, because Peter Jackson, I think, came back and ended up directing them.
yeah, but I think he worked as a writer on them or something.
Yeah.
But it was definitely keeping him busy because he has this gap directing wise between 2008 and 2013.
In terms of the visual storytelling, 1 out of 10. What does Justin Tyler score Pacific Rim?
Let's give it a 9. It's holding up 12 years later. Shouts to that.
That's right. Aging like a fine Jaeger wine. The use of sound in this movie is pretty important.
I mean, it's cool. Jaegers make robot noises, and the kaijus make screaming bio noises. So, pretty good.
Would this film have had a bigger impact if it had a more memorable score or a theme that people came away humming it?
I mean, yes, but I don't think they were going for that per
Sure,
se.
sure.
So, so maybe that's a lack of ambition. But definitely, I feel like this movie was going more visual across the board. So I'm would give it a lower score for sound. I'm gonna stick with a 5.
Yeah, technically well done. I felt like, the Jaegers definitely have a good sense of weight to them. That's another thing I think a lot of modern special effects movies struggle with these CG characters. They all look and feel very light, whereas, the Jaegers all had a real weight to them, and that has a lot to do with the framing, but it
Yeah.
also has a lot to do with the sound design. So, well, the last category is theme. This movie is a big summer popcorn flick, a term that would often offend a Roger Ebert, but
Mm.
I feel like it's appropriate for this movie. How did you what themes did you maybe feel that Pacific Rim was attempting to traverse?
Do good with big robot. You,
Maybe with the best example in cinema history.
yeah. Walls no don't work. Walls bad. And I don't know, thematically the themes are pretty simple. I can't really give it a lot of like hype on blowing me away with the themes.
You and I totally align. What would you designate it if you were going to give it a numerical value out of 10?
Let's go all the way down to 3.
3. All right. Well, that means we've got a total score here. You gave the plot a 4, the characters and performances a 6, the visual storytelling a 9, the use of sound a 5, and the themes a 3, which gives you a
Far.
total of 54.
Yeah, on the
Um,
classic
Now,
scale.
last time you were on the show, your score was a bit lower, but you did bump up the numerical grade a bit, and that is something we allow all guests here on the show to do. So
Mm.
that still stands. You grade
And like I said, I liked this more on the rewatch, which, that doesn't always happen. So I would bump it up to a C, even a C plus, I think, because the fact that this movie looks better than the movies coming out now is crazy. That's more of an indictment of modern filmmaking than it is saying this movie was especially great, but
because this
it
movie
is.
isn't really ahead of its time in the visual storytelling.
Yeah, I guess we've gone that far backwards. That's what's crazy to me.
No, I agree, and that's why I align with your statement about it being an indictment more than necessarily a celebration of this film, but it's certainly 13 years later held the test of time.
Yeah.
I gave the film, I gave the plot, I should say. I gave the plot a 6, the characters
Mm.
and performances a 7. I gave
Wow.
the visual storytelling an 8. I gave the use of sound a 7, and I gave the themes a 5. So I was definitely a little bit kinder.
Man, you love being nice about sound.
Hey, what can I say? I've got sensitive ears. I'm a lion.
That makes sense.
I feel
You
like,
can hear the rustle of a leaf in the distance when
yeah.
you are hunting the great antelope of the African veldt. So it makes sense.
So you saw me get lunch when you flew in today, is what you're
That's what I was saying. That's a way of saying like sick lunch.
Yeah, it can be very difficult sometimes to watch movies as a lion because you hear a lot, so it really demands a lot of focus. And this was a movie that, yeah, it was easy to look at, but it was also easy to kind of just lose attention. I graded the film a 66 to your 54. I wouldn't say either one of them is a stellar score. I decided to give the film a C to your C plus. So I think we're probably sounds like we're pretty much on the same page. And within the sort of sub genre that you find this film in, I think it's a standout. I agree that it ages well, but at the same time, even when you compare it to other 2013 films, when you compare it to all the options you have out there, it's really difficult to grab someone by the shoulder and go, "You got to watch Pacific Rim."
Yeah, definitely. What day is it, boy? It's the day we watch Pacific Rim, Mr. Scrooge.
Again already?
Wow.
Well, I really appreciate you, as always, being here. I hope you and I never have to find ourselves in a situation that we have to defend the world fighting a giant kaiju. But if I have to, I wouldn't mind calling you.
We're drift compatible. Fortune favors the brave, dude.
Well, thank you so much for being here. I must ask before you go, will you come back? Will you watch will you watch and review another film with Al?
Yes, I will, Al. Roar.
Platinum Plastic isn't just a proud sponsor of Real Talk. They're also the home for all our new designs and merchandise. Follow Platinum Plastic on Redbubble by clicking the link in the description and see all our A+ gear. That's Platinum Plastic on Redbubble for all your Real Talk merch.
Guillermo del Toro is a master filmmaker with multiple examples in his filmography that more than defend his credibility. But what his 2006 film Pan's Labyrinth achieved is truly unique. The film is both an example of expert cinema literacy as well as an evolution of human storytelling techniques that have been evolving for thousands of years. The picture is a myth with great meaning that is told through a horrifically brutal lens, which rewards the audience with fantastic visual sequences, if they can make it to them. Although a minor one, my only criticism of the film is its unrelenting approach to violence that leaves nothing to the imagination. Pan's Labyrinth at times feels like the antithesis of the Hitchcockian approach to violence that's dominated Hollywood since Psycho was released in 1960, and I have no doubt that that decision will render the movie unwatchable for some. Pan's Labyrinth's message is as clear as those found in children's fairy tales. Reality is, and likely always will be, inescapably cruel, but the good of man is defined by an unrelenting fight against all odds for morality and imagination. In the end, the film allows its audience to choose between one of two endings, and each is as heartbreakingly profound as the other. I'm so glad that Liler, the silver screen sugar glider, could swoop in once again to help me chat about this modern classic. Liler, sorry about that fawn that made you solve 3 riddles to get in here. I told you you should bring hand lotion.
Oh man, and I really missed out on not having a snack beforehand because those two grapes really.
I'm glad you're back. I'm glad that we're talking about Pan's Labyrinth on today's episode. We're celebrating the work of the wonderful Guillermo del Toro. And I don't know that there's a movie that defines him more. I mean, Shape of Water,
Yep.
2017, wins a couple Oscars if that's your bag. Pan's Labyrinth, though, I feel like this is a really special movie.
Yes, I agree. I think that this is like quite the bread and butter of what I think of with Guillermo del Toro, where he has this really only him way of marrying like historical fiction with fantasy escapism. This was a very special watch for me. This was my first time ever watching it. There's so many things I love about your show, Al, but one of the really nice things as being one of your pals is that there's an accountability to watch the things that I've been meaning to. I can't just sit on my laurels and be like, I'm not ready, I'm not cozy. You are helping me find a way to make the time, and I really appreciate that. I'm so happy to finally watch this movie. Thank you.
Oh, well, I'm so glad to hear that. And I'm really, really glad that you watched this. Guillermo has this style of what I would call like this sort of mature whimsy, this adult
Mm-hmm.
fairy tale fantasy. And the plot of this movie is really two plots happening simultaneously.
Mm-hmm.
It's a fairy tale that's sort of playing out, but there's this unfortunately very all too real story that is going on.
One quick other point is that I did not realize that I was misremembering which Labyrinth movie I'd been meaning to see. What I found is that there's two Labyrinth movies that I've been meaning to see. And initially, before I looked into like about to hit play and stuff, I thought I was watching Labyrinth with David Bowie. But then when I turned this one on, I was like, oh no, oh right, there was another Labyrinth movie I'm meaning to see. So I went into this completely blind. I've seen the eyes and hands like fella in different like mediums,
The
like
Pale
different
Man.
clips.
Yes.
Yes, yes. What was his name?
The Pale Man, they call
The
him.
Pale Man went into this completely not knowing what to expect. I didn't realize the entire film was in Spanish. So that served as like another. I'm always excited to jump into a foreign film because there's no escaping. Can't sit on my phone. I can't
Right, it
like
forces
look.
you to watch. Yeah.
It forces me to pay attention, and I do, and I love that. I appreciate that. How did I handle the two corresponding plot lines? I thought that initially I was confused with like the storybook beginning.
Sure.
But again, that was just because I didn't know that it was going to fully be in Spanish. So I was half paying attention until I was like, oh shit, I got to like super pay attention now. So that by the time it got to them on the road and the mom needing to pull over because she didn't feel good, that was when I was like super locked in and was like, all right, I'm going to go from this point. I was more wrapped up into what was currently happening, like the Civil War in Spain. Mercedes, who was like, oh my God, I loved her so much. I just wanted everything for her. I was probably the most focused on that. And I think that sort of lends to like I'm a as a grown up person now, I think that there are certain films that help me get realigned with the with the child in me, and I
Sure.
think this was one of them. Sugar Guy's got to pay bills too. I don't know what to
Hey,
tell you guys. Watching Ophelia's story touched something in me that I wasn't prepared for. This labyrinth world, not quite as violent, not as on the surface violent as this war. This war is
oh,
constantly, you
absolutely.
know, constant shooting, constant bloodshed, where with the labyrinth where its violence really shows. I mean, the part with the pale man, that was
Sure.
horrible.
But
That
but
was so awful.
but to that point, I think what's interesting is when we're in the labyrinth, if you want to call it that, if we're in the fantasy side of things,
Right, yeah.
there is a threat of violence. For example, when we get to the Pale Man, you've mentioned the introduction is so incredible because Ophelia finds herself in this beautiful room. It's very warm. It's very inviting. There's this wonderful spread on the
He
table,
says there's going to be a sumptuous feast, gonna feel inviting.
and then you look up and you can see this big creepy pale dude just chilling at the end of the table. I mean, you can't miss it.
It's right there. Yeah.
But they
You
pale a,
can't miss him.
he's a bit of an eyesore, and
Yeah.
the camera pans up and just sort of goes around the ceiling, and there are all these murals of him eating children. What I think is so fascinating is that is obviously consuming a child is pretty dark, and to see it painted and what it again, it is all the threat of violence. Spoilers, she does get out of that situation. In the real life, there is no threat of violence. There is only violence. So in a way, I think what the plot is able to achieve is two very different types of suspense, two very different
Mm,
types of fear. You know, one that is based in reality that sets up the necessity for escape, but shows that even, you know, in that sort of escape, there's still things you have to deal with. Where the Wild Things Are is one of my favorite movies, and it does something very similar where it's about a young boy who escapes into his imagination because of the negative things going on in the world, and
hmm.
even within his imagination he has to still deal with the things going on in the world, and this movie is very similar.
Yeah,
Go on and on. I want to jump to the end of the movie because we are
yeah.
talking about plot, and the end of this movie is my favorite thing about the movie.
Oh
It
my
really
God.
is a choose your own adventure. It gives the audience the capacity to decide, do you want to go the fantasy route and do you want to believe that? Or do you want to stay here in reality and sort of understand what actually happened?
Yeah,
Regardless of your choice, I think the message is clear. The human ability to escape, to create something, to imagine something is really, really profoundly necessary, especially
yeah.
in hard times. I'm very curious to see what you scored it.
My plot score. Oh my God, my plot score. I don't want to do the points. The points is such an easy way to kind of
The half
like
point.
skirt around, yeah, the half points
We've
and
got a
stuff.
very confident Lila here. Doesn't want to do the half point.
I don't want to do that. If I can, wait, can I do that?
Of course. Oh, please.
Oh,
Throw a half
nah,
point in
I don't
there.
want to do it. I don't want to do it. I want to be confident in my answers. Oh God, I think I give it a 9. It wrapped up everything satisfyingly, and not in like that everyone lived happily ever after. There was none of that actually. An entire family died. A mother died during childbirth. I mean, the one who survived was the baby. It's tragic as hell. However, with that said, the rebellions are on the winning side of the civil war. It ends with this, ends with Mercedes being able to live in the light, in the truth, that she doesn't have to play spy anymore. She can be with her brother and with the rest of the rebellions and continue to fight the good fight.
That is an injection of hope. I think
Yes.
it is a reminder that the whole movie is obviously a fairy tale. It's an analogy,
Yes.
but the idea of Mercedes taking the child and now is going to mother this sort of
Yes.
boy. It's nature, not nurture. Whoever you're in the hands of is likely going to dictate who you are to become, or is
Yes.
going to have the most profound impact on that. When she takes the baby, that is this moment of hope, of recognition.
Yeah.
Yeah, influence is possible. The main character dies. That
Yeah.
is the opposite of what happens in
She's
every fairy tale. In
absolutely,
every
and we see it in the beginning. We just, you think with the
right,
blood, like like going in reverse, you're like, ah, there's a way to reverse it. No, our main character is done so.
That's every character in life.
Yeah.
Everybody dies. So it's not about the fact that the movie has the courage to go, no, everybody dies, and this is a movie about what you achieve in death, what you achieve in life, as opposed to how you escape death, or
Yeah.
some sort of
Mm,
Deus ex machina that shows up at the end and just saves her, whatever. This
yeah.
is a movie about the necessity of imagination and how
Mm,
important it is, and it is driven home because she dies. It does
yeah.
not work if she survives. The fact that her last memory, or if you want to believe that she has escaped into this actual fantasy world, I just think that's such a profoundly beautiful sort of use of
Yeah.
plot to, I don't know, say something that it feels like every story is afraid to say. We're talking about characters and performances now.
Yeah.
This is a foreign film. I mean, this is
Yes.
not an American film. So the fact that there are characters that visually resonate in American pop culture, you mentioned earlier the Pale Man. People don't
The
even know what
Pale
his
Man.
name is. He's appeared in probably everyone's nightmares. You have the
Yes.
Fawn, that is this really amazingly, distinctly beautiful character. The general,
That's Doug Jones, if I'm not mistaken,
correct? Yeah,
correct?
yeah, the legendary Doug
The
Jones.
legendary.
And
Was that him speaking Spanish then?
I'm not sure. That's a great question. I would.
Hmm.
I don't know. I'm going to assume
I
not.
kind of want to assume that he'd go that far
I'd
into
hope
it.
so. Yeah. I
I
just
feel like he would. I feel
Doug
like he
Jones, if
would.
you're listening, please let us know in the comments.
Let us know. Let us know. Was
But
that
say it
you?
in English, please. Write it in English.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, and but the human character in this that
Mhm.
is so unrelentingly brutal and dark is Sergio Lopez's.
Oh,
I mean, this guy is got to be up there with one of the top cinema villains ever. I mean, put him in the back
yeah.
seat with Hannibal Lecter. Put him back there with Anton Chigurh. I mean, this guy. But I'm saying
He's
this,
so evil.
but the performance is incredible. I mean, he
Yeah.
is at all times reserved, but somehow simultaneously unrelenting in his decision
Hmm.
making and the things that he does. So I could go on and on. I want to give you the floor, but the characters and performances in this movie, and I bring up the fact that it's a foreign film because it has resonated so much here in America and in American pop
Yeah.
culture. I feel like it kind of gets extra points for that.
I think it 100% gets extra points for that because, like, this is, again, we're going back to 2006 where the ability to chatter to everyone at once the way that we can today, not the same in 2006. So something like, for example, like Parasite. When Parasite came out, it's all everyone could talk about because it's all like, we have these devices, that we can see what everyone thinks at every moment of every day. In 2006, I hardly imagined that it was that quick. After one day, you're like, God, I've heard 20,000 people talk about this Pan's Labyrinth. Like, I've got to go see it now because it is so. And that's also why, like, again, like, as like a silly little American, like, sugar glider that's always stuck in her own world, I didn't realize this was a fully Spanish film. Also, just because Guillermo's just gotten so immersed into like American cinema
Sure, yeah.
that like I didn't realize. So it took me a while to be like, oh my, even the credits are in Spanish. What I thought was so fascinating about Captain Vidal, he is kind of like the twisty mustache villain where he is he's just like super evil. There isn't like a Scar from Lion King background.
Yeah,
Like
there's
actually maybe
no
kind of more like
explanation. Yeah.
yeah, okay, like Syndrome from The Incredibles. Like
Hmm.
they go into why he
Oh,
is the way he is. With Captain Vidal, we don't. The one
there's
we get like morsels that like this whole thing about stopping the watch at your father's death, it's almost just like this burden that you are forcing yourself to carry. Nobody's asking you to carry that around and that he feels that this is the role of a man, a captain, and as a father to a boy.
yeah,
That is what he encompasses his identity around. Sometimes I miss villains just being villains. Sometimes I just miss like a bad guy being a bad guy.
100% a bad guy. You're right. Yeah.
100%. When he was like stumbling into the labyrinth after her, Now, I imagined his death was going to be completely different. I knew this man was going to die, and I was like, I know I'm going to be so satisfied with his death. And I thought it was going to be more fanatical based,
Sure.
which I thought was very interesting that you bring that up, kind of up to the audience of like, does Ophelia pass into this otherworldly world, or does she just pass away? And like, it's kind of up to you to think that. Where I thought he was going to see the fawn, and
Sure.
then he doesn't, and I was like, oh, wait, it's is it all in her head? I don't
Right.
know. I don't know. However, I was still very satisfied with his death when Mercedes was like, he's not even gonna know your
Yeah.
name.
Yeah.
Done. You're
Shush.
out.
Yeah.
Bye.
No, 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 no.
And I
You don't get a, yeah, you don't get
you don't
a,
get nothing.
yeah, you don't get a
You
final
lose.
request. You don't get a last
No.
meal. Yeah.
I went a lot in on Vidal just because like you had mentioned him too, but I felt like everyone's character really supported this world. The doctor, I felt like when Vidal found the vial of the antibiotics, I
Mhm.
like fell to the floor. I was like, he's caught.
Yeah.
No! Like I felt everyone everyone's involvement gave stakes to this story. And I felt like I Ivana Bacchero, who played Ophelia, I thought she was a great little girl actor. Like I
Oh, just
thought that
incredible. Yeah.
she really played into that also at that time too. It took me some sitting with and reflection to understand it. I was really mad at her for taking the grapes. Unreasonably mad. The movie ended. I could have done like there every movie I could do without something, I guess, but I could have done without the grapes. And in my mind, I was like, if she skipped lunch that day to do all these tasks, then maybe I'd make sense. And then it really like kind of like came to me about her journey in this altogether. She is someone who defies being told what to do just because you're telling me what to do. She is I think she's supposed to be 10 or 11
Yeah.
in this. I remember that. You couldn't tell me anything, and I have to remember that.
She is a kid, and I think too often when you're writing, or not when you
Mhm.
specifically, Lila, you write children very well, but when
Thanks.
in Hollywood, in movies, when you have a kid who's the hero, the main character, they're just written as an adult and they're cast as a kid, and
Exactly.
I
They do
feel
all
like
the right things. Yeah.
right in this, she is a kid, and everybody in this movie is flawed to a degree. People make mistakes, people do things. I actually think
Yeah.
the character Carmen, who's her mother, is this really
Yes.
interesting character who's this very shades of gray. She's sort of doing what she has
Yes.
to do, but she's also very much sort of validating certain things that she
Yes.
shouldn't. But
Yes.
at the same time, she's clearly doing it to try to protect her family and her
Yes.
unborn child and her born child. And so
Yeah.
everybody in this movie is flawed, clearly, just like in
Yeah.
real life. But I think by Ophelia making that decision, or and I even thought of it as less of her consciously making the decision and her just more of like being again kind of a kid, a little bit
Yes.
forgetful, a little bit
Yes.
like I'm kind of in over my head. There's a little bit of arrogance there.
Mhm.
And the reaction that the fawn has later, where he really comes down on her, I thought was a really interesting almost foreshadow to what
Mm.
comes next, because when he returns she's clearly so elated to have a second chance, and I don't
Yes.
think she would be that happy if she had not gotten scolded. So and so that
Yes.
scolding in the moment, which feels almost a little inappropriate, then does kind of come back to be this sort of, well, was that a manipulation? Was this whole thing a manipulation? We get to the end of the labyrinth.
Mm.
Is the fawn real? Is the fawn evil? So there's this constant sort of choice Ophelia has to make. And I think by her making the wrong choice that one time, not only does it obviously move the story forward, but I did appreciate it because I felt like it, I don't know, it just made her,
Yeah.
it made her feel more human. And also just interesting visual sort of harmony where we have the pale man
Yeah.
with his two eyeballs that he has to pick up, and she happens to eat
Yeah.
two very eyeball like grapes that are just like,
Yes, I thought that too. I was like, she
yeah.
ate two Not only did she eat two pieces, she ate two I like pieces. And I also, to touch, just to further piggyback on what you're saying, like, um, this, this incident, this choice that she makes also teaches her the lesson of consequences.
Right.
Like, And it's not only a consequence against her, she like it's not against necessarily, she watches two fairies die on behalf of the decision that she made.
Hmm.
Like she's seeing now, and we can't learn any of these lessons in life if we don't make these mistakes. Not that we're picking up grapes when we're being told not to, but she's learning if I go into these things without thinking about it, there's consequences to those decisions. And like you said, she wouldn't have nearly been as willing and as ready to continue the task had the fawn not scolded her and then deciding to give her a second chance. Had she just been breezing through these tasks, like what lessons is she learning? I softened a lot of my annoyance of like you were told not to eat anything. And of
But
all the things, you ate grapes. There was a ham. There was a big ham. Like
get a big
that's what you
jiggly plate of
sacrificed.
Jello. Get a handful of Jello if you
Come
get.
on, like it's a feast. You sacrifice all that for two grapes? Like, baby girl.
She eats the grapes. The fawn, when he is scolding her, he does say, "You have basically become mortal now. You have lost the ability to come in." And of
Yes.
course, when the movie ends, she, perishes. She passes away. And I do feel like the eating of the grape that immediately results in the fairies getting killed is a symbol for, this sort of foreshadowing of what's going to happen at the end of the
Yeah.
movie when she is proven to just be mortal. And,
Yeah.
the decision to poison the captain, the decision to try to
Yeah.
steal the baby. All of things are decisions that she makes that lead to her inevitable, well, not inevitable, but that lead to her death. And
Yeah.
therefore, the choice to eat the grapes, it's almost
Yeah.
this sort of, Adam and Eve esque sort of losing of the innocence. I will shut up.
I will shut up.
Well, you can't shut up because you got to give this a grade. You got to give it
I
one out of
do.
10.
Oh my
Character
God, the character,
performances.
jeez,
I
Louise. Oh my
know.
God. Honestly, I give characters.
No
Oh
Anna Faris
God.
in this one.
No Anna Faris in this one. Missed opportunity, but I understand.
She would have
We're
made a
gonna let
great
one
fawn.
white person in it that I guess Doug Jones is probably the right choice. I totally get it. I really want to. I'm giving him a 9. I think
Well,
that
nice.
there's
Okay.
a few things, but like God, so strong, super duper duper strong.
So I mentioned it in my open. I just want to say out of the gate because this is what docked points for me. I remember watching this the first time. I am a lion. Some would say I'm the king of the jungle. Us, I don't. I would never say specifically me, but as as the group we rep. So I've seen a thing or two. I've mauled a gazelle or two in my time. This movie is unabashedly violent. There are,
Yeah.
I mean, you see a man's nose
Oh my
get
God,
in with the butt of a
I
gun,
forgot.
and it does
Mhm.
not cut away. You
Mhm.
see a leg get sawn into with a hacksaw.
Mhm.
And I'll stop, but we don't want to get this thrown off YouTube. That we talked about the captain earlier, and there's this sort of
Mhm.
lack of sympathy. Obviously,
Mhm.
these strokes of violence go a long way in making us very afraid of him. When he finds the antibiotic, you are afraid of what he is going to do because you have seen it.
Mhm.
But the fact remains, there are people who are not going to be able to get through this movie. There are people who are going to have to watch through their eyes. And unfortunately, there are going to be people who have suffered trauma in their life, who have suffered
Mhm.
abuse. And a, a, a piece of entertainment like this is going to bring things back that are would be extremely unpleasant. And so I don't know. It's a choice. It's clearly effective, but I have to dock the movie a little bit because
Mm.
otherwise it would have been a 10 out of 10. Otherwise, it's an
Mhm.
incredible movie. It's so beautiful, it's so inspired. I'm curious though, what were your thoughts on visual storytelling and what would you give it out of a 10?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I feel like I didn't even think about the violence. I completely thought about the not only the set design of like the Labyrinth world, but how the general the 1940s Spain, it didn't feel costumey, it didn't feel like a set, it felt like a real place. The
That's in character.
kitchen that the help is, preparing food in, Ophelia's room, even the forest doesn't feel like a forest from 2005 probably at that point. It
Right.
all felt like really lived in, it felt real. And so with that, that was where I was like, enamored. I think that maybe I have just become a desensitized little glider, that
Oh
the
no,
butt of the
maybe.
gun to the guy's face, like that like made me scream. Oh, this is relentless. Driving the point home, this is a bad dude. When he meets his eventual ends, I will cheer.
Right.
I will not cry one single tear for this man. Yeah, you're totally right that there is an egregious amount of violence that could deter. It can't quite reach all the masses because you aren't leaving us to our imagination. Yeah.
Well, sorry, and I just want to make it clear too that I appreciate the choice and I see
Hmm.
why the choice is made. It's not lost on me, nor am I necessarily arguing that the choice shouldn't be made. I'm just acknowledging that by virtue of making that choice, you are going to turn off people and they're not wrong for being turned off.
Hmm.
I
Hmm.
personally wasn't turned off by the film.
Hmm.
I just having seen it once many years ago and then revisiting it, I was like, wow, that still hits.
But no, totally. I mean, what I'm saying is that you offer a good, like, sort of alignment reminder. Not everyone's living in Lila's world. So visual storytelling, score I give it is the 9. I loved it so much. I loved it so much.
Lila, if we ever give you like a jersey, like a Lila jersey, I think you're gonna be
It's a
number 9. I
9.
think you're gonna
I think you're so right.
someday you'll give something a 10 and it's really gonna be important. That's what all this is all just
That
set.
I'm just building it up.
Yeah.
Ah, I'm scared.
Well, the next up we have use of sound. There's a part of me that wants this movie to have like a more memorable score because I
Mm,
have
hmm.
seen it a
Hmm.
couple times, and even now as I walk away, I don't remember. Now I could say the same thing for The Princess Bride. I could say the same
Hmm.
thing for uh, Bowie's Labyrinth that you mentioned earlier.
Hmm.
I don't necessarily have a specific track or anything, so I'm not sure that I would dock the movie. But if we're talking about sound, I don't know. I think it's worth mentioning that this doesn't have a sort of a score that I think
Yeah.
will live on past its screening.
You're touching upon what I think I'm really altogether feeling is that because nothing's really standing out to me, I could kind of take that as like a sign it could have been worked on so that there was something. I feel like I'm going to watch the movie again and be like, how did I forget this part? But because it's not like really coming to me, I think I want to give it a 7.
Okay.
It's not bad. Of
No.
course it's not bad. And like it's not like something stuck out where like, okay, the scene where Ophelia has to give blood to the mandrake root under the
Yes.
bed.
Yes.
I was like, oh, she's biting into a blood pill. Oh, like there's the capsule. You can see the capsule.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, when was she given like a vial of blood? And I was like, oh, oh no,
Yes.
this is just
This is
real life.
yeah.
Got it. So like that's something that stuck out to me, but that's more of like a eagle eye viewer, couch critic of being like, there it is. A 10-year-old didn't sell biting into her thumb well enough, and I saw the casing. There is nothing like that sound wise for
Sure.
me. So I think with that, I would give it a 7. I think to your point, due to memorability, due to
Yeah, you're right. It's not a knock, but the sound design is what it
it's
should be.
fine.
The music doesn't feel necessarily as inspired as the rest of it. It's not a.
Yeah.
I've got a 7 locked in. That brings us to theme.
I'm gonna give theme an 8
Okay.
because I feel the same way. There isn't one direct lesson. There's like quite a few, and some of them aren't that applicable to to me because I'm not living in 1940s Spain in the middle of a civil war. I am also not a 10-year-old girl that has lost like her whole family. But can I tap into that child in me, or can I tap into the strong characteristics that everyone's going through? Like Mercedes has making me want to be braver. Like
Yeah.
Mercedes makes me want to be a braver person, to stand up for the things that I believe in a lot more visibly and out loud than I may have felt in my past, because I'm afraid of rocking boats, because I'm afraid of
Sure.
getting into
Sure.
arguments with people. But watching her, I'm like, I need to be a braver person. I think Ophelia makes me want to be a more curious person, like ask more questions. The theme of faith and believing in and doing what's right. Like at the very end, Ophelia doesn't toss her baby newborn brother down a well. that was the right thing to do.
Right? She made the
You
right
know,
decision.
she
Yeah.
did the right thing. And in the face of knowing that your evil stepfather is going to shoot you, not likely, he is
Right.
going to kill you,
It is certain death. Yeah.
and she does it anyway. There's a really big, I guess, a theme of bravery, courage, all the tasks that the fawn had her do. She's doing this in blind hope that, it wasn't going to lead to what was going to happen had she given the baby over. But a lot of it was just, yeah, like hope. I think hope in that the rebellions were going to take down the regime, hope that she's going to end up in a better place. And I like to think that she's in a better place, whether she's in the labyrinth world or whether she's just in the great beyond. But better than, I mean, it just sucks because then her stepdad was dead, so she could have lived with Mercedes. But what are we gonna do? What are we gonna do? Anyway, I give Theme an 8.
You give them an 8. All right. I feel like I made that comment about the jersey and you stopped giving out nines, but because it
I'm
sounded
scared
like a
now.
9 what you were describing, but I've got an 8 locked in. We have a total then. You gave the plot a 9, the signature 9. The characters and performances got a 9. It's visual storytelling a 9. Use of sound a 7. Theme an 8, which brings the total to an 84. Now, like I've said
Oh
before, yeah, surprising, right? That's kind of the real talk. What
God, I
real
hate
talk.
numbers. Numbers are the worst.
No, but
I gave it an
remember,
84. Oh,
an 84 is technically an A. Anything 80 and above is an A. But
oh.
I'm curious if you wanted to designate it a letter grade.
In real curriculum, REE, because that is the one I count as the
Right.
correct one. I'm very happy with giving this an A. It was excellent. There was so much to enjoy about it. There was so much to take with you afterwards that I am very happy with giving this an A.
The A is locked in. That's part of the experiment here. I think it's very easy when we talk about if we like or dislike something to have these sort of feelings, but we actually break it down and start dissecting these things. We can start to see that maybe there is a little bit of a discrepancy between our initial reaction to something and what we actually break it down through. Having said that, my score, I
Let's hear
gave the
it.
plot a 10 to your 9. I did feel like I just felt like the ending was perfect. I felt like everything that led up to it was fantastic, so I gave it a 10. Characters and performances, I also gave a 10. I genuinely feel like the fawn, the pale man, just from a visual, these are characters that are just
Oh
burned
yeah.
into the brains of not only anyone who's seen the movie, but anyone who's seen the poster, anyone who's seen the trailer. And then the performances are phenomenal, and I really genuinely do feel like Sergio Lopez gives like an all-time great performance here. And
Oh yeah.
the women in the cast you mentioned, phenomenal, but I just feel like there's what Sergio's given on the page and how he brings it to life is just it's next level. Visual storytelling, I gave a 9.5. Like I said, I think this is a beautiful movie. I docked it a little bit because I don't think everybody can watch it. Um, so that's what I gave it. Use of sound, I gave it a 9 to your 7. Maybe I was feeling that Lila
Wow.
9. I felt like I had to balance that. But again, I
The
feel like
9 caught on.
the invisible sort of craft oftentimes is use of sound and much like an edit. So I gave it a 9, and then I did give the theme a 10. For me, this is a perfect example of what it's trying to discuss. I think that it is a contemporary fairy tale told through what this lion believes to be the best form of storytelling that exists in our contemporary culture. I feel like cinema is the foremost form of storytelling. This is a fairy tale perfectly told through the cinematic language. And I think when you get to the last moment of seeing what Ophelia is thinking, maybe experiencing, but what I'd like to think she's
Yeah.
thinking before she dies is this perfect metaphor for the power of imagination and the power
Yeah.
of belief and faith and choice, that even upon your deathbed, you can find happiness if that's something that you can create. I gave it a 97 to your 84. So for me, that's an A plus to your A. I want to know what people think of the movie. I want to know what they would grade it in the comments. This was your first time watching it. This was not my first time watching it. So I think it was maybe a little bit easier for me to appreciate some of the bigger things that
Yes,
you were
for
obviously
sure.
absorbing for the first time. Having said all that,
I did show you before we filmed. We've got a new shirt up in the shop, up
Yes, I
celebrating
do.
the Pale Man. Um,
Yes.
so go check that out. That's on Redbubble, Platinum Plastic, in the Real Shop page. Lila's got some merch in there.
Yeah. Man, yeah, that pale man shirt is absolutely gorgeous.
Lila, thank you so much for coming. I always love when you come by and
Yay.
chat movies with me. I hope you'll come by again.
I will be back in a split second, my friend. I'm here anytime that you need me here.
As always, thank you, Lila, and I'll catch you on the 9. Before we jump into the next review, I just wanted to thank you for listening this far, and I ask that you please give us a follow if you're enjoying the show, as well as comment what movies you'd like to hear us score on Real Talk. We're almost certainly on your favorite social media platform, so search Al the Movie Lion wherever you scroll. This review is brought to you by Post Wrestling, your trusted destination for pro wrestling podcasts, breaking news, and honest reviews on everything WWE, AEW, and beyond. Want to stay in the loop? Just search Post Wrestling on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts and hit subscribe. For a film to be brave, it must be equal parts unique and confident. The Shape of Water is as brave as it is whimsical and doesn't hesitate at any moment to freely exist as an adult fairy tale about falling in love with what you're meant to be and how difficult that adventure inevitably is. Conservative wisdom is symbolized by Michael Shannon's Richard Strickland, a man whose entire outlook on the world represents an endless chain of hypocrisy and fear. After all, Strickland consistently articulates motives of divine inspiration, but his last spoken words are pure blasphemy. Sally Hawkins is beyond charming as the muted Eliza Esposito, who loves a bath more than perhaps any heroine in cinema history, and checks off every box a performer might hope to be tasked with in a dream role. Octavia Spencer and Richard Jenkins give fantastic performances, bring layers of humanity and depth to their supporting roles. But it is Doug Jones, who was given the challenge not seen in Hollywood since Ben Chapman brought the Gill Man to life in 1954's The Creature from the Black Lagoon. The film isn't afraid to ask difficult questions like, is the amphibian man a god? And offers thoughtful answers such as, he did eat a cat. The Shape of Water took home 2 Oscars in 2018 for Best Achievement in Directing and Best Motion Picture of the Year. But how does it hold up? I'm very excited to see how many eggs my friend, post-pundit and co-host of The Wellness Policy, Neil Flanagan, scores the film. Neil, thank you for once again flying in and joining me here in the real jungle. Don't mind the pool over there. We're growing a friend.
It is great to be back out, and it's interesting to me that there's this wonderful air service between Ireland and your part of the world. I think based on my last performance, they've decided to set up a regular route.
We're glad. Yeah, look, we've got some good producers here on the show. Real Digital prides itself on taking care of our guests, taking care of our talent. But we're here to talk about The Shape of Water today, and I'm so excited to be chatting about this with you. In Guillermo del Toro's long list of great films, The Shape of Water is certainly his most award-winning. And definitely one of his most interesting, tackles a lot of interesting themes, has some great characters. So we got a ton to unpack here. What were your thoughts on the plot of The Shape of Water?
I'll preface this by saying I watched this film for the first time for this conversation with you. I had not seen The Shape of Water, although I was very aware of it in 2017 and perhaps doing unexpectedly well at the Academy Awards the following year, but somehow just never really got around to seeing it. I think the premise just felt kind of weird, and I'm not against weird.
Of course
Weird
not.
is
We're
weird.
talking
Is
to a
good,
lion about movies. Yeah.
Exactly, exactly. Yeah. But I loved the plot. It was it is a little bit insane. We've got this blend of genres really with sort of Cold War spy, Cold War era spy thriller. It's a creature feature. It's a romance, but albeit about as unconventional a romance story as you can get. Although essentially it was a sort of Beauty and the Beast for grown-ups.
Yeah.
I think the narrative's very well structured. Nice. It's a high stakes story. too. We've got espionage, we've escape, a race against time, but it's really driven by a very personal, emotional connection between, and we'll maybe expand on all of this between Eliza and the asset, the creature, and that's at the heart of of all of this.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think if you had to describe this film in 30 seconds or 30 minutes, you'd probably get some looks for some people. It is a kind of a weird premise. It's hard to talk about it and not sort of acknowledge those things. But I think anybody who gives it a chance, and that's I guess the point I'm trying to make is similarly, I didn't see this when it first came out. But everybody who I didn't hear anybody who saw it and said they didn't like it. I just heard a bunch of people who didn't see it because they thought, well, that's a weird movie about a fish man. And it is a weird movie about a fish man, but it is also a very good movie about a fish man. And I think the plot, as I mentioned in my intro, it's kind of this very clearly like a kind of a fairy tale, much like Pan's Labyrinth, and for
Mm.
adults. But I don't know, it's just structured in a way that I don't want to call it predictable, but it's very classic. But regardless of that, there's still so much suspense. You're kind of on the edge of your seat, and there's all these things. And I almost have a level of appreciation for movies that have plots that you might label again as being predictable, or oh, you kind of know what the outcome is going to be, but who cares? It's about the ride you go on, and the plot for this film is just a phenomenal ride. I don't know any other way to put it.
Very definitely, because I mean, you've got these moments of deep human connection and romance, and they're very touching. And the fact that they managed to pull that off in a film with a very low budget, that was news to me as well. You know,
Yeah,
checking this out, I think it was like let's call it 20 million, but I think
yeah,
19.5 is
just
what
a
is
little shy.
cited.
Yeah,
Incredible to pull that off on this kind of a budget, and I think even whether this is accurate or not, I'm not entirely sure. Del Toro uh, took a cut rate or put some of his own earnings back into it so he could get the what he wanted from it. But that's somewhat aside from the plot. But yes, these moments of connection and emotion, as you said, with moments of like real peril and chases and escapes and thrilling moments too. Like you said, describing this, even if you go more than 10 minutes, describing this film to a friend, like, so what's this about? It is a strange film with a strange plot, but really excellently executed.
1 out of 10, Neil. What do you give the plot?
I'm going to give it a 9.
Love it. Locking it in. And I do want, look, I can only speculate. I am but a mere mascot for a production company. But if I had to take a guess at where the money was saved on this production, I'm looking at the cast. I hate to point pause here, but
Mhm.
yeah, when you're looking at these big budget movies, hands down, far and away, the most money gets spent on the cast. Great example I always like to go to is a modern classic, a movie I know everybody heralds. I can't believe it didn't win Best Picture that year. Men in Black 3 was a movie that I think what Will Smith got paid for that movie was about 5.5 million more than the entire budget for this film. And that doesn't even account I think they spent $100,000 on each of his two double-decker uh, buses that sat outside of set each day, and then one of which was a gym, just so you know. So if anybody goes, well, why do you need two double-decker buses? Well, because I guess one has to have a stairmaster in it. And then he also, the studio had to pay for, if I recall, there was not a townhouse available, so they had to rent every room in the top floor of whatever hotel they had him staying in. So anytime people go, how do you make a movie for $20 million? Oh, you get good human beings to be in it. That's what you do. And if you
Mhm.
want to spend $200 million on a movie, you get a director and three or four casts at the top who don't mind getting paid $250,000, or I'm sorry, a quarter of $100 million for probably about 2 weeks worth of work. So I gotta get off my soapbox now because I don't want this kid. He's got claws, you know. Every once in a while, he's just got to point out
Yeah.
corruption in the business. And yeah, this movie is a phenomenal movie. And when we transition now into characters and performances, I'll just use this as a clumsy segue. Let's give the cast that probably worked at scale for this movie due, because they all could have turned it down and it would have been a different movie, but they all said yes. They probably weren't paid what many people, including their agents, would have argued that they were worth. But at the end of the day, they made a great picture, and we're all here to bask in it. So with that said, Neil, bask. What'd you think of the characters and performances?
Oh, tremendous. And it's a really good, actually, it's a really good segue into characters and performances, because this is a tremendous cast. Really just wonderful actors. I mean, I've long been a fan of Michael Shannon. He gets somewhat typecast, I think, into these sort of troubled authority figures. And I don't know if you've seen, it's not a movie, Al, it's a television show, Boardwalk Empire, where he
Yes.
plays this puritanical religious agent of the prohibition uh, police, whatever that federal bureau
Sure.
that existed was to enforce prohibition.
The original
And
straight edge society, I think, is what they.
yeah, exactly. Yeah. And he is just incredible in that show. And that was one of my first sort of real exposures to this guy as a captivating screen presence. I think he's brilliant in this. Sally Hawkins is brilliant in this. Octavia Spencer, of course, as always, is brilliant in this. Doug Jones, to perform in the way he manages to do underneath a ton of prosthetics,
Yeah.
I think is just an incredible skill in itself. And it's something that he has somehow made a stock in trade of since then. I mean, one of my other little geeky motifs is that I am a Star Trek fan, and Doug Jones played a heavily prosthetic character in one of the newer Star Trek shows, Star Trek Discovery,
Oh,
where,
wow.
of course, as usual, he's completely unrecognizable from the actor's headshot. But he does a tremendous job. And just maybe to dig into it a little, I think what Sally Hawkins manages to do, conveying this incredible breadth of emotions, longing, loneliness, which is maybe something we'll get into in themes when
Sure.
we talk about that, defiance, love, of course, and joy, without saying a word. I just think is a real achievement, and well worth the Oscar nomination that she got for this film.
I,
Um,
if I could just say, I totally agree with that, because not that you get a lot of them these days, but you can go back to a movie like The Artist, which came out a few years before this, a modern feature length film that was a silent picture,
yeah,
and that's an achievement, but the whole movie is a silent movie. Sally Hawkins is basically playing a silent movie character in a talkie, in a full color movie, and she does it, and she has her moments. She does get her chance to shine and use her voice, and it's used really beautifully and really well. And I kind of mentioned in my open, there are other movies, and we get into them on this show. Nosferatu, the modern Nosferatu. I can only imagine talking to Lily Rose Depp ahead of time and going, well, we need you to do this. We need you to do this. We're going to need you. And she does it. Same thing in this movie. Sally Hawkins is tasked with things that I think any actor of any quality would really, really struggle to do, let alone to just knock it out of the park. And you mentioned Doug Jones, incredible what he's doing, but to be fair, he is aided by makeup and prosthetics. You get someone like Sally Hawkins, who's kind of on the other end of that spectrum, where she doesn't really have anything other than the wardrobe and her physical performance. And I mean, literally in this role is as a muted performance. She's having some tools taken away from her.
yeah.
She's just as lovable a heroine. She's just is relatable as any lead in any movie. I mean, yeah, really could not give higher points to a performance. And if this movie is great for anything, I think it is, and it's great for a lot of things. The two lead roles are well worth the price of admission, because those performances are, again, just, well, I won't reveal my grade yet, but yeah, I found them phenomenal, and couldn't agree more with Michael Shannon.
he's got a lot of great performances in TV and film, some sleeper performances, but this is a great showcase because even though he is the big bad villainous guy, there is
Yeah.
still a ton of subtlety. He reminds me a lot. The last time you were on the show, Neil, we talked about the Shawshank Redemption and the Warden character, who
Yes.
sort of this duality of everything was based in faith, and his final act is him taking his own life. And in this movie, very similar, where everything is driven by this sort of divine hypocrisy, and we see in his last moments that he's a total coward and basically
Yeah.
denounces his own god. And yeah, just an incredibly layered character. Haven't even talked about Richard Jenkins, who is this great friend, and I love that he, like most friends, says he's going to help out Eliza, then doesn't, but then realizes he should and comes back. And
Yeah.
he's not perfect. He's not the perfect friend. He's super flawed. He kind of loses more in this movie than a lot of the other characters do, but he's there hanging in and being a good friend. And Octavia Spencer, again, kind of at all times, is that great balance of just like, I think that all fantasy movies need, of just, hey, what the hell's going on here? Just this constant like reminder
Yeah.
of like, wait a minute, what's going on? And so anyway, yeah, I loved this cast. I loved the performances. What would you give it? 1 out of 10, Neil?
10 out of 10 for me. I mean, of all the cast members that we mentioned, there's not a bad or even a flawed performance I feel among them. So yeah, that's a 10.
And this is coming. Look, I'm a lion. I know, if you don't mind me revealing, Neil, you're a cat guy. You like cats. You're a fan of cats. So the
Oh yeah.
fact that this movie has a character that consumes a cat unapologetically, and we're still giving it high
Hmm.
marks on characters and performances, that really means something, Mr. Del Toro. I know you're again most likely listening. Uh, that speaking of eating cats, visual storytelling in this movie. I mean, my God, Doug Jones's makeup, the sets, the just the pacing, and you have an auteur in Guillermo del Toro who has things under his belt like a Pacific Rim franchise, who has a
Yeah.
um, who has Pan's Labyrinth, and so to get him in 2020, I'm sorry, in 2017 operating at this level, I mean, it just feels like a master kind of working at his peak. What were your thoughts?
I agree. And again, this was one of the moments where I kind of wanted to double check the source of the budget for this movie because it's incredible. The visuals are incredible. I mean, the color palette is so deliberately, aquatic and beautiful. There's these greens and teals and blues, and the entire world of the film feels somewhat submerged and dreamlike, to the point of, is this is this a dream? Is this some sort,
Right.
are we seeing events that were really intended to unfold? I mean, my take is yes, we were, but sometimes, as with many movies, it doesn't really matter.
Sure.
The camera's constantly moving, um, in that kind of floating way. Again, this water theme, it sort of just captures the mood. And I feel also, worth a shout here is the production design in the visuals, because the period detail to me, again for this budget, I keep coming back to, is incredible. And the contrast between, which I enjoyed, the sort of the sterility and the coldness and the just sort of, it's almost an evil character in itself, of the laboratory,
Yeah.
and that building, and the warm, lived in, clutter of Eliza's apartment, for example. That kind of dichotomy is, just a key visual for me, when I think of, how this film looked. The design of the creature itself, it's a work of
Yeah.
art.
Yeah.
Alien, but kind of beautiful too. And
Yeah. Weirdly, I mean, or not weirdly, like it's obviously human in that it's bipedal and it kind of moves, but there is this I don't know I mean, again, I'm a lion, so take this for what it's worth, but
mm,
it is this just, yeah, very beautiful kind of, I don't want to say sexy, but there is this like confidence in this sort of like masculinity that comes through it, as opposed to just this weird. And like you mentioned earlier, the comparison between Beauty and the Beast, but I even feel like the Beast is so much more of a creature and something, whereas this really, yes, obviously it's a fish man, but it really does just seem kind of like a man that lives in the water. And again, the story does a good job of kind of positioning him as being almost like a, again, like a deity or something that's beyond man or an extension of man. So it doesn't ever, while at least for me while watching the movie, it didn't feel like their relationship was inappropriate based on any sort of species sort of difference. It just felt more, I don't know, like a natural exploration, and that's all points for the visual storytelling. Because if that's not perfect, you completely lose the audience. If he looks a little too much like a trout, people are out. Let us know in the comments your reactions on a scale of 1 to 10 how sexy you thought the amphibian man was. That's
It's a
what we
key
need
point.
to know.
It's a key point, Al, because this picture kind of pushes the envelope somewhat, and like these characters engage in a sexual relationship, so it's not just a kind of deep love or something like that. You know, there's a physical element to it too, which is when you're,
Yeah.
again, goes back to you're trying to explain this film to someone you feel, you know, you need to actually just persuade them to watch it, and they will see, oh, yes, I see. Yeah, they make it work.
Right.
And I think, again, like you said, the, um, the design of the creature is key in that, and there is a masculinity, and yeah, almost a kind of sexiness to this, you know,
He's got
non-human.
abs. He's got some nice abs. What else can I
Yeah,
say? If I'm gonna have an amphibian man, I at least give him some abs. Yeah, no. Guillermo del Toro is a phenomenal filmmaker who always seems to sort of find ways to push the boundaries of what the audience is expecting. And you know, if you're gonna make a love story with a creature in it, you know, why not go in that direction? And it forces the audience to, at least the audience paying attention and being affected by the movie, to sort of question what is love and what does it mean to love something, and to try to pursue a relationship with it. And you have to have a certain level of maturity to be able to digest that and appreciate it for what it is. And I think the visual storytelling at all time is operating on that level of sincerity. What would you give it out of 10, Neil?
I'm giving it a 10.
Love it. Locking it in. That brings us to use of sound. Uh, this movie has a lot of whimsy to it. I'm curious.
Mm.
What'd you think of the splish splashing? Did the splish splashing sound good?
There's a lot of it, I've got to say, you know, in the sound design. Water is the constant presence in the sound design, dripping faucets, the rain, the bubbling tank, um, the final immersion at the end. You know, they
Yeah.
had a lot of a lot of water. Maybe I'll go back to the score, and you talked about whimsy, and it really feels almost sort of Parisian, you know, so it's almost sort of European accordion whistled melodies. But what I think that does very well is sort of anchor you in a slightly off world, if you know what I mean. It's the fairy tale tone of the film, and I think that the music, the score, does a really good job of that, because it doesn't feel hyper realistic and gritty in the way that, you know, a cop movie, you know, for example,
Sure, sure.
might. And so for me at least, the score worked, and I also, there's the use of music in the film where Eliza is using the sort of big band records, the Glenn Miller stuff, to communicate with the creature. I enjoyed that as well. Um, so I don't know, a bit of a mishmash, I guess, there when I'm talking about all of the in your face water stuff, and somewhat understated but dreamlike score. Um, I guess I really liked it, and
That's
but at
good.
the same time, I can't go to the highest point on the scale. So I'll give this a very solid 8 out of 10 for use of sound.
The 8 out of 10. No, I think that's fair. You brought up some really great points just about how, again, there's just sort of, you hear water a lot of times. You hear it in different places in different ways, and the water itself in its physical form is sort of represented in various ways. And the only thing I'll add to it, the movie, as all great films do, builds to this really beautiful visual kind of at the end. And when you get to that point, you're underwater, and the absence of sound at that point, I think, is really thematically important, obviously, because we're just with the characters. We're literally just kind of floating. And sometimes, again, when we're talking about the quality of sound, it's when you remove it and the impact that has. And I think that by creating such a saturated environment right before that last moment, there's sort of a peace that comes with being underwater and kind of being in the quiet and just with the score. So I found that to be a really effective use of sound in the sense that it was not used in a way. And when you, again, go underwater, how things can kind of mute out. Again, I felt like it was sort of an appropriate use for the experience, but it reflected really well. That brings us to theme, our last category here. There's a lot of themes in this movie. Obviously, when
Yeah.
you're dating a fish person, you got to have something going on between the ears. I'm curious, what were some of the themes that maybe surfaced for you?
Let's start with empathy. I think that's a big um, theme of this movie, and it's not just empathy between the two lead characters. I feel, what you've got in the supporting cast is this closeted gay man and a black woman in 1962 as well. And so the fact that you've got people who in the society of the time would perhaps not treat as equally as others. I think there's a
I think that's
part.
putting it nicely.
Yeah, I'm probably underselling quite a bit there, but the the message of finding love and beauty in those that society casts out as different or even monstrous in the case of the creature in this, um that's a very big theme in here. I think solitude and loneliness has also comes through. I mean, the main characters, or most of them, feel like lonely individuals. Eliza is this lives this life of solitude. She's got her friend in Zelda, but she's alone. Her pal, I suppose, Giles again. We have the misunderstood creature, and yet they manage to find connection and a family of a sort with one another.
Just want to add to that because there's this, everybody has their own kind of world, but they're disconnected from it. The Richard Jenkins Giles is sort of, he's an artist, but the only kind of character that you see him interacting with is this connection that's not really getting him work. I think there was a little bit of an implication there might be some sort of romantic issue there or something. And so you can see that he's all the more lonely. The same thing with Octavia Spencer's Zelda character. We spend just a little bit of time in her home with her husband, and you can see
Yeah.
that she's not really heard. She doesn't really have any control there. So even in her own home, even in her own marriage, she's very lonely. And yeah, and obviously Eliza, I mean, she can't speak. So I think there's just a loneliness that comes with the lack of ability. I think most people feel most lonely when they're not being heard. So to have a
Yes.
character who represents loneliness being symbolized by a mute, that I think is a really great symbol. So anyway, continue, but I did just want to inject that in there.
Yeah, well, it's a great point, and I think it brings me to the next thing I was maybe going to mention, which is sort of communication. It's and communication beyond words. I think one of the arguments this film makes is that some of the most profound connections that we can have in life don't require speech. Love can be communicated through actions and empathy and shared experiences and standing up to authority together. And um, Yeah, that's what I want to say. Communication that doesn't necessarily involve discussion, if you like. And that also brings me to Defiance, which is a big part of the storyline that really sort of gets you through, a lot of this film. Some of the we we mentioned it earlier, but it's a big part, I think, of the plot is the peril and the chase and the sort of race against time to get the creature into the water by the time that he can reach the ocean. This is all a race against time. These people, these misfits, have to sort of band together to defy basically not just the U.S. government. We haven't really mentioned another character in the film, the our Russian spy pal.
Oh yes, of course, the
But
doctor.
the the USSR as well. So it's a story about powerless people finding the courage to stand up to oppressive and cruel systems, I guess.
Yeah, no, that's a really eloquent and kind of beautiful way of summarizing that. Because I completely agree, and I think for me that was my biggest takeaway from this. In terms of again feeling having the ability to feel lonely, but then translate that into action with people who have similar beliefs. And I think that's a really, I don't know, maybe the best takeaway someone could have from this film. 1 out of 10, Neil. It's that time. Last one to lock in for The Shape of Water. What are we giving the themes?
I'm going to give it 9. The only reason it misses out on a 10 is because I feel like, and maybe this is my fault rather than anyone anybody else's. I find it hard to sort of lock it into a theme. It's I'm splintering my themes as you just heard, but yeah, I mean, what the film communicates, it does so brilliantly. So I mean, I feel almost guilty, but I'll stick with the 9 out of 10 for theme.
No, I think you'll find you're in good company pretty soon here. Well, that you also gave the plot a 9. You gave the characters and performances a 10, the visual storytelling a 10, the use of sound an 8, and the theme a 9, which brings it to a total of 92. That's a pretty darn good score. I don't know what any amphibian men listening would want this one to get graded. I think that's great. Any adjustments you would want to make there? 92, you're pretty happy with that. That's an A in our book. We could bump it up to an A plus. What do you think?
It's interesting. I deliberately didn't do any calculations before talking to you. So I sort of expected this was going to be more in the sort of 96, 95, 96 range. No, 92 is extremely solid. But I'm going to I'll stick to my guns and we'll call it an A. We'll
All
call
right,
it an A. And come on, this is a absolutely tremendous film. An A is an A. Yeah.
look, I couldn't agree more, Neil. I think this is a phenomenal picture. I gave it a little bit better of a score than you did.
Okay.
To For the plot, I gave it a 10 to your 9. Again, for me, I feel like
Mm-hmm.
it keeps unraveling the entire time. It's a really beautiful sort of an analogy for a handful of different themes. I gave the plot a 10. I gave the characters and performances, believe it or not, I gave it a 9 out of 10 to your 10
Ah,
out of 10. Yeah, I feel like these are really phenomenal performances, and I felt like the characters were great, but I do feel like the characters in some ways are almost more caricatures. Like we said earlier, they kind of represent themes and the individuals that are the characters. I feel like represent sort of marginalized groups more than they necessarily do individuals, and I think they're really fun characters, but I don't know that I'll be thinking of them in the same way that I think of some other great characters in history. For example, Michael Shannon's Richard Strickland is a very notorious villain, but he's not quite on the level of like an Anton Chigurh, for example, in A No Country for
sure.
Old Men. So performances a 10, the characters I guess an 8. So for example, so I gave it a 9. Visual storytelling 10 out of 10. Use of sound I actually did give a 10 to your 8. And themes we're tied up 9 to your 9, so that's a 96 to your 92. So not much different there. I loved this movie. I think anybody who has not seen the picture should go out and see it. If you're a Guillermo Del Toro fan and you haven't seen it, blasphemy. If you like any of the actors that we've mentioned, you will be more than satisfied, I think, with the performances they deliver in this movie. Neil, will you fly back in sometime and watch another movie with me?
You better believe it. I'm enjoying this very much, Al. I'll be back.
Awesome. Well, luckily we did get you a plane ticket, so you don't have to swim back. But thank you for being here, and until next time, Neil, we appreciate you. Thanks for listening, and here's a look at the scoreboard from today's show. Justin Tyler graded Pacific Rim a C+, and a 54 to my 66 and a C, with a 60C average. Lyler scored Pan's Labyrinth an 84 and A, where I gave it a 97 and an A+, with a 90.5 and A average. Finally, The Shape of Water scored highest with a 92% and an A from Neil Flanagan, and a 96 and A+ from me, with a 94 and A+ average. I'd love to know your scores, so please let us know what you graded each film in the comments. I want to thank my pal Lyler, the Silver Screen Sugar Glider, for soaring in today. You can support Justin Tyler by subscribing to Characters Welcome on Patreon, and support Post Wrestling and its own Neil Flanagan by subscribing to their YouTube channel, which is linked in our description. Join me next time on Episode 7, the 2007 Western Expansion. Writer Joe Belcastro drops by to review 310 to Yuma. Jimmy the Toucan will fly in to grade No Country for Old Men. And from Testify on Hulu, Billy Wayne Davis will score The Assassination of Jesse James by the coward Robert Ford. Thanks to the team at Real Digital for producing this episode, and Platinum Plastic, who supplies our show's merchandise on redbubble.com. If you haven't left a like by now, you might as well, and subscribe to the channel as well as hit the bell icon to be notified when Real Talk drops twice a week. Thanks for listening, and if you're going to talk movies, make sure it's Real Talk.
Fortune favors the brave, dude.